Rahim. Here it is, everybody, inshallah. Continuing to talk about the signs of Judgment Day. We did talk about some of these signs we talked about last time. So let's just go over it really quick. We talked about the Prophet ﷺ himself being part of the signs of Judgment Day. We talked about his death. We talked about the Fath, or the opening / conquering of Bayt al-Maqdis. We also talked about the plague that happened in Palestine, in the city called Imwas, and the plague taking over, the death of a lot of the different companions that were there. We also talked about how money and luxury. So when you talk about money, you pretty much talk about luxury, which becomes prevalent. So in other words, the abundance of money, the abundance of luxury, and people focusing on that. And it's really important to keep in mind that when we're speaking about the abundance of money and the abundance of luxury, that actually means alternating people's focuses, alternating the Muslims' focuses, alternating the Muslims' mission, the Muslims' legacy, actually shifting from one thing to another. Now, this is important to remember because the more, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, because when you start getting more money, your focus becomes that you want to probably increase that money, and you start feeling more entitled. Now, this is important to keep in mind, because once people have more money, they would feel that they are more entitled. They basically start thinking, and their brain starts connecting that I was capable of getting services done. I was capable of getting privileges just because I had the money. So then their brain starts connecting that money is basically my way of security, my secret message, or my secret method to getting not only security, but also authority. So that's why you would see more. In fact, men are more, I would say, obsessed with this fitna than women. Women usually want the effect of money and don't usually look at the numbers themselves. All right. But men tend to understand more of what money can do. And that's why sometimes you could see, or in fact, almost always, all right, you could see that when we're speaking about the abundance of money, we're actually also considering the implication of what that means. And I want you to focus on the word implication here, because what people usually relate to is, yes, I've got the money, but they would just look at it that, okay, I've got the money, and don't necessarily see the implication, the effect, the long-term effect on people's behavior, on people's social interactions, on people's missions, or even goals in life. All right. So when the Prophet ﷺ talks about the abundance of wealth, the abundance of wealth, and how people are shifting their focus, that's why you could see also that they would not want sadaqah. In other words, sadaqah, people are not in need for it anymore, because everybody is actually living the ability to have all their needs fulfilled, okay? To have all their needs fulfilled. Now, this is important to keep in mind. Listen up to this one. The only thing that keeps us moving forward is really when we feel that something is in danger. In other words, pain, fear, and hunger are the most things that motivate mankind. This is real. It's really strange. The only thing why you would endure the pain to go to school and study is because you recognize, by not getting a degree, that you have a high chance of not getting a job. You've got a high chance of probably becoming homeless, probably not getting whatever you need to sustain your life. The only thing why you would probably maintain a healthy diet is because you recognize that by not maintaining a healthy diet, you're going to end up basically risking your body, high blood pressure, sugar, the list goes on with different problems with your body. Now you fear for your body because you fear for your life. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that in you. Same thing when you're talking about not only security, but you're talking a lot about evil. The reason why, as human beings, we advanced in methods of technology, medicine, transportation, whatever it is because of fear. If we didn't fear whether nature, illnesses, disasters, we wouldn't have actually not thought of transportation, medication, or even treatment. There are all the different kinds of treatment, or even architecture in order to create security. So when we look at our own nature from day one of our life, what's the first thing that we recognize? Hunger and fear. What's the first thing that a baby, when they are born, what's the first thing they recognize? Hunger and fear. Hunger and fear. The baby is born and he's outside his mom's womb and he's afraid that he might fall, even though he doesn't really know what falling is. He doesn't even know, or she, they don't even know what life is. They know nothing. They are born with no information, because information is actually based on things that you had learned in the past. He knows nothing. So not fear and not the consequence of a fall. They don't know that. Not the consequence of hunger, but they will still cry and they will still look for their moms, for their mom's breast in order to nurse. They don't recognize the consequence of things, but they do recognize fear and they do recognize hunger. All right, so that's the part of fitra. The other need as a human being that you need is reproduction. To get married, to have kids, to make family. That's another need. Now, really important to keep in mind that such needs we actually share with animals. This is important. وما من طائر يطير بجناحيه ومن دابة في الأرض ولا طائر يطير بجناحيه إلا أمم أمثالكم. Every single creature that walks on earth, or even a bird that flocks up above you, is nothing but similar to your own creation. In other words, we share with animals feeling danger and understanding that we have to develop different ways to secure ourselves. Number 2, hunger. Number 3, reproduction and making family. Those are part of our natural instinct. In other words, as human beings, we also have an instinct that we share with animals. Now, that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us that, listen, I don't want you living like an animal. Yes, you do have certain features that you share with an animal, but you as a human being, you actually live. Sorry about that, but the smell of the food is basically distracting me. If you can take this away. The smell of spices is really strong. Where was I? Yep. So that's the impact of those spices and how they really made me lose the chain of thought. Where was I? Right. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically teaching us that I don't want you living the type of life and the instinct that animals were created for. Because you, as a human being, what you have is a higher mission, is a higher goal for your life. Their mission, their goal, that is the animal's goal, is just to live and die. Just to live and die, reproduce and live and die. They've got no mission, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had subjugated those animals for you to slaughter for food or slaughter for reasons of different kinds of use. Why? Because they don't actually have a purpose for their own creation, but for you. As a human being, if you live your life just to eat, drink, find security, and reproduce, then you're just like an animal. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that for a person that lives that kind of life, إِنْهُمْ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. They're actually like animals. In fact, they're even worse. Why? Because they were given the intellect, they were given the mind, but they didn't use it. If they don't use it to recognize that there is a purpose for their creation, a purpose for their life that is more important than just living for reproduction and living to make money. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Islam was teaching us, I need you to learn how to give up on things in order to gain something else. Give up on your money, but I thought that was my place of security. No, no, no. Don't live the mirage. Your money is not your place of security. Your place of security is actually akhirah. Hunger. I need to eat. Because if I don't eat, I'm going to get hungry. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, no, no, no. I want you to learn how to live hunger by fasting in order to focus. Change your mind from thinking that your life is about consumption to your life is about the farther goal. Because if you think that your life is to eat and get security in this life, then you're living like an animal. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us, I want you to live moments of hunger because I want you to shift your vision. I want you to learn how to give up. You will not be, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you will not be believers. حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون. You won't be believers unless you spend and you donate from what is dear to you. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, listen, I want you to learn that this dunya is not your place of focus. Give up on it. Your sleep, it's part of your instinct that you want sleep. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, well, the salihin, they actually fight sleep. So what do? In Surah Al-Sajdah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that what do? That they would avoid sleep. Why? They avoid sleep because they're actually wanting to focus on their qiyam, on the dhikr, even during the night. But it's part of their instinct to sleep. It's part of their instinct. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them, no, 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 no. They're using their body for a different mission. They're not like animals. Now, when you look at the signs of Judgment Day, it's actually telling us the implications of a lot of these different things within the society. Yes, people are going to grow and get advancement in some sort of advancement in how they maintain security, how they maintain food, how they maintain a lot of the different things in life, but that is going to be at the expense of their morality. Are you with me here? So in other words, life is going to be better sustained, no doubt about that. No doubt about that life is going to be more sustained. Abundance of food, abundance of security, abundance of this, but then at the expense of their morality, later on, they will be basically living in a fitan. Now, that's important to keep in mind because the more luxury coming in, the less as a human being will be willing to give for the sake of akhirah. Why? Because the more you feed yourself, the more gluttony, the more you want to take more calories and more intake. The fatter you are, the more food you want to take. It's that easy. It's that easy. And then what happens? That person starts wanting to feed more of wanting to secure their life. They won't be able to get up. They won't be able to do much. They won't be able to give in. They will be living the selfishness. Why? Because they would be more fearful of giving up on it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Prophet is telling us some of the implications of that lifestyle, whether dhuhur al-fitan, whether we're talking about people killing each other for a reason that we don't, that even the person that was killed, they don't even know why they were killed. People will lose the trust, will stop being honest and trustworthy. Why? Because they just want to keep everything for themselves. So what do they end up doing? They basically start finding different means to start taking up your material, your things, your property. And therefore, when you see that daya' al-amana, we talked about that. It's not just trust, it's not just property and wealth and all of that, but it's also the behaviors. The behaviors changing, whether we're talking about more zina, men and women cheating and committing more zina. Why? When you speak about zina, you're talking about the loss of value for family. This is important to keep in mind. More zina, who would commit zina? It's a person that does not recognize the value of family, the value of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given them, yes, the reproduction in order to make family, but because they didn't care about the value of family, to them, it becomes the lust is for no reason, but like an animal. Just like an animal. So, oh, I've got this lust and I need to empty it somewhere. And it becomes outside of family. When family is not appreciated, when the worth and the value of family is not recognized, that's what actually brings in zina. That's why here in America, for example, and in the West in general, zina and the single parents and all of those are very common because family is regarded as not that important. When people lose the appreciation and the value of family, zina becomes the alternative outside of wedlock. The other part is intisharul riba. I'm here taking one thing at a time because I don't usually when the signs of judgment they are talked about, usually they would be taken as subjects like the increase of riba, the increase of zina, and so forth, without looking at the implication within the society. What is a society going to be living in? So when the Prophet ﷺ talks about that riba or interest would be common, this is not just to talk about banks and these kind of systems. Why would anybody go to take a loan where there's going to be an increase on it? Well, it's because people lost their trust and people have lost their family ties. Pay attention to this one. People lost their family ties, and this is what's happening right now. People lost their family ties, and therefore it becomes, well, I will even, hey, if I'm going to give you this money, I'm going to charge you for it. Why? Well, because they lost the family tie and lost the responsibility over a brother and sister, that I have to be there for them when they need the money. I have to be there for them whenever they need a loan. I'll have to at least give my part of contribution to support. Because people lost the commitment to family, the commitment to contribution to their social connections, riba would actually be replaced because of the social bonds being broken, because of the trust and the values in people's moralities have long been abandoned. So riba becomes the alternative way in order to find a way to increase of luxury. How is that to increase of luxury? Well, when people would buy homes or buy cars or buy probably furniture right now, when they don't actually have the money for, how can they buy something that they don't have the money for? Well, that's because they have increased their level of what they would consider a necessity. So right now, the society is making up more and more and a higher level of necessity. And that's where they would feel that I need to increase my wealth demand. The wealth demand, I need to get more money in order for me to live up to a sustained expected level that the society is convincing me subconsciously that I have to live up to. So everybody thinks, well, my friend A, B, and C, they've got an updated car, it's the model year today, this year's model year, and she's only paying $200 a month or $300 a month. Hey, I can't afford a car like that, but I can afford a $300 a month. So then, but if she were to actually pay in cash, she would probably need to pay $6,000, but that car is going to be used. But of course, she's not going to get the type of appreciation from the society. So what would she do? She would feel that in order for me to get the appreciation from the society, or at least the acceptance from the society, I have to live up to this new facade, this new image that the society had created. So number one, people's increase of levels of luxury, people's increased level of luxury basically resulted in more gluttony, in more need, invented need. And number three, that created or was actually at the expense of their morality. Number four, so that's why not only are we talking about, for example, the loss of the value of family, but we also talked about the loss of the value of the social bonds within the society. So when you look at a lot of these different things, you could see that people lost the value of their deen, people lost the value of even family bonds, lost the value of even ilm. That's why the Prophet ﷺ talked about that al-jahl would become prevalent. Ignorance about the deen would become prevalent. They'll have a PhD in probably mathematics, but simple things about the Islamic rulings, they don't know. Simplest things. PhD in mathematics, PhD in physics, astrophysics, you name it. They're doctors and probably the head of the department, but simplest things about Islam, they don't actually know. Reading the Quran, they don't even know how to read it, but they'll have advanced degrees in whatever degree that they have. They mastered all that. They were very smart. Their GPA was definitely high to be a medical doctor, to be the head of the department. But when they can't even read the Quran, their deen is lost. if they can't read the Quran, if they cannot even understand simplest questions on Islam, well, that means how much did they actually learn about Islam? It was really at the expense of knowing their Islam. It was just to feed their dunya. And this is really important to keep in mind, because when we're speaking about their aql is lost, and we're not here talking about aql to mean they got a degree in medical schooling, but we're talking about the loss of what is even more important than the education in secular studies, but that's the education for their akhirah. Number 4, the loss of family, the loss of the value of family, which is what actually leads to zina. And then 5, which is the loss of, number 1, money management, considering priority, and 2, how money is coming in, which is why you will see that at the end of judgment, at the end of or part of the signs of judgment day, you will see people engaging more in gambling, in stealing, in taking people's property, etc. All of these different methods, it really started out and became like the dominoes, exactly like the dominoes falling one piece after another. It really started out when the deen was lost. Look at it in this right there, this acronym right there, DNA-IM. We talked about that one many times. DNA-IM, their deen, their nafs, their aql, their ilm, and
Allah أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
all right, so if you actually look at this acronym where the D stands for deen, the N stands for nafs. So deen means people's piety, people's religion, 2, people's bodies, and 3 is aql, which actually means mind and education. The I stands for ird, which means family. The M stands for mal, which means wealth. You could see that even the signs of judgment day are related, whether directly or indirectly, to all of these. All right, I want you to look at this because this is extremely important, because many times people are just looking at the signs of judgment day at a very reductionist perspective. Like they would just narrow it down to just this subject without seeing the implications of how it relates to people's lives. Like, okay, so people will do more interest. How is that going to affect the society? What would that bring? What is the implication on the rest of the community? And why we don't usually recognize all of that is because we have not learned how to see these points that the Prophet ﷺ was giving us on Judgment Day, in order to see it through the lens of maqasid al-sharia, the legal maxims, to recognize how a lot of this type of immorality is going to be so prevalent within the society that you're going to see a society that had totally given up on the principles of Islam because they just want to increase in their dunya. So that's why you could see that the Prophet ﷺ did actually mention that not only the changes in people's morality and where people will engage in killing or even drinking or even women dressed, but reality is that they're dressed and they're naked, which is right now, what are those type of tights that are, during my time they were called tights. Right now I think they call them yoga pants or something like that. And they would call them yoga pants, but they're really tight and their body is completely, it seems like it's dressed, but yet it's naked. So that's basically the Prophet ﷺ telling us of that time. And it's really sad that right now we're seeing hijabis on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and making videos of themselves actually doing workout or even right in the society. They would be dressed in hijab, or at least their head is covered, but the rest of their body is actually naked. Are you serious? How on earth did they think that the hair was more attractive than the rest of the body? I have no idea. I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't know how these people are thinking, to be honest. All right, let's continue. It's not even a modern hijab. It's not even a hijab. It's an oxymoron, really, to call it a hijab. It's an oxymoron. You're contradicting yourself by calling it a hijab because it's not even hijab. It makes no sense that, oh, I'm covering my hair, but the rest of the body, which I'll just stay quiet. This is a youth class, right? I'll just stay quiet. I think everybody else understands what I'm talking about and what my heart is about to say. All right, we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. I'm trying to maintain my. All right, the other part, which is shahadat az-zur. We talked about fraud and how scamming and how false witnesses is going to be prevalent. And we also talked about, this one's rather interesting. We talked about how there will be a lot of women, and we were talking about the decrease in testosterone in men, based on, I think you brought it up as well, the decrease in men's testosterone and how we basically talked about how men, all right, demasculizing men is going to bring in more in the abundance of women. We also talked about ecological changes, whether the increase in the expansion of greenery and water springs in the Arabian Peninsula. We talked about that as well. And we talked about some of the changes that were going to bring about. Now, this one's rather interesting. In the Euphrates River in Iraq, there is actually hidden treasures there. The Prophet ﷺ talked about it. In fact, it's going to be like a mountain of gold, but there's going to be this gold rush because it seems like that the Euphrates River is probably drying up somehow. And that's going to uncover a huge area that is going to be bringing in a mineral or the minerals that are actually hidden in their area. And it's going to bring in a gold rush in the Euphrates area near the Euphrates River. And the Prophet ﷺ actually said that and he warned that people would go that area or even go for the gold rush. Why is the Prophet ﷺ even telling us about a gold rush? Why the gold rush, and tell us about the gold rush? What's the big idea? Okay, my dear, I want you to get closer. Get closer. Yep, because I need to feel that you're next to me. Get closer. Why is the Prophet ﷺ telling us about a gold rush? He's telling us about a gold rush because when you are pre-warned about something, you are pre-cautioned. When you're pre-warned about something, it's basically in order to tell you that such a thing will actually happen. So do not be a part of it. So do not be a part of it. Can you sit over here? I really feel lonely. Thank you so much. All right. There's a very strange thing, though. The Prophet ﷺ talked about that we will be capable of talking to animals. Part of the signs of Judgment Day, we will be capable of not only talking to animals, but even talking to animals that are considered wild animals. Could there be an app one day where it will actually, I have this contractor that I brought with me. He's Turkish. He would talk on his phone in Turkish, and then, you guys know that. And then this translating thing would actually translate whatever in Turkish he's saying. He barely speaks, his vocabulary in English is probably maybe 10, 20 words. All right, just 10, 20 words, but everything we basically communicated through the Google Translate. All right, now, is there going to be one day an app that's going to interpret wild animals' words? Probably a tiger, or maybe a lion, or maybe cats, dogs, whatever it is. Well, I know that there were claims that this is a technology that is happening, yet it's not necessarily very accurate. But according to this hadith, there's going to come a time where we will literally be capable of communicating with animals. We will be capable of talking to them and them responding to us. Rather interesting and scary, isn't it? But that is actually telling us that there's going to be some sort of an advancement in our intellectual capabilities and our intellectual capacities, but definitely a huge regression in our religious intellectual capabilities. In other words, we will be capable of decoding and understanding a lot of the different things in this world, where, yes, we will be capable of even understanding the mysteries of animals' communication. We will be capable of building homes, where the Prophet ﷺ actually told us about part of signs of Judgment Day, people building up structures, the skyscrapers, as part of the signs of Judgment Day. So architecture will be advancing, illnesses and treatment will be advancing, communicating with animals will be advancing, transportation, there's going to be a great advancement. All of these different things around us, there's going to be a great advancement, but at the expense of people's morality, at the expense of people's deen, at the expense of people's knowledge about the deen, at the expense of their social bonds, at the expense of the simple things. Now, really important to mention, your mother and father, listen to this, everybody. Your mother and father, to many, you would see them, oh, they're actually living a boring life. You would see them living a boring life. And your imagination and fantasy of what makes a good bond, there's a certain fantasy, what you would consider a better marriage life. Guess what? Your mom and dad's parents were actually living a better bond than the bond that your mom and dad were living. Your grandparents were living a better bond. This is real. This is real, which is actually interesting, because we're seeing divorce rate is actually increasing and not decreasing.
Well, I think we're talking about the different kind of relationship.
Well, wait a minute. Absolutely. It's a different kind of a relationship. But humans are humans. You see, it's an issue of how much you invest in that commitment. It's how much are you willing to invest? Right now, our appreciation and value for family has definitely decreased by far, that we're not willing to be patient until we actually grow in probably our deen or our health or whatever it is. We're not waiting to grow. We want things to be done as soon as and as fast as possible, which is why you even see, even when we're talking about weddings, it's all about a fake appearance and a fake show. It's a cake cutting. The girls is really pulling tons of makeup and a fake appearance, even in beauty, a fake appearance, even in the clothes, a fake appearance, even in the show that we give people. We're so focused on appearance that we lost the value of what is within. Lost the value of what is within. We just want to make sure that, hey, everybody thinks that my daughter was given the highest respect and the highest appreciation, where it's basically in a magnificent hotel that'll probably cost $20,000 per couple hours. For the couple hours, where even the hairdresser, whatever the fashion, the clothes, some wedding dresses, they might actually cost $10,000 and $7,000 and $10,000. I bought mine for $300. Not bad. And I thought it was too expensive, to be honest. I actually thought it was too expensive. I bought it from Philistine. I thought I overpaid. Yes. Yeah. But it was hijab. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Anyhow. What? Oh, you'll be, you see, that's what I'm trying to say, is that don't worry about, alhamdulillah, I did my wedding in the masjid. Very simple. At Masjid al-Huda, right there. Masjid al-Huda, very simple. Who attended my wedding? Nobody? Nobody? Those that attended my wedding, we've got a number of people. Most of the people that attended were actually from the students that were attending classes, and that was just like, oh, well, alhamdulillah, Masjid al-Huda. All right, now what I would like to say is that when we look at how people's focus on appearance and materialism was at the expense of what mattered most, whether we're talking about family bond, whether we're talking about values, whether we're talking about the deen, is actually bringing people more and more depression, more anxiety, more sorrow, and more sadness. Why? Because you as a human being, in order to live the happiness, it's not the outside to bring on the inside. Satisfaction is something on the inside. Satisfaction and values, they're actually on the inside. It's not the appearance. We would see right now, I do matchmaking. The girls, what do they want? Well, he needs to be rich. He needs to actually have this. And then they're looking, and degrees. People are so infatuated with degrees, thinking that degrees is a reflection of people's understanding, people's high intellectual capabilities. Well, that's not always the case. They would assume that if the person had the money, that means he's going to be hospitable. That's not necessarily the case. They would assume if he had a degree and a college degree, that's going to prove that that person is smart, understanding, not necessarily. In other words, the society is living a lot of fakeness. A lot of fakeness. The reality is a person of akhlaq, a person of deen, a person of understanding, a person of value is actually something that many people are actually not recognizing. And that's why you see an increase in divorce rate, an increase in the levels of anxiety and depression, an increase in suicide rate, an increase in homelessness, an increase in even hunger, even though food is abundant, but you would actually see people increasing in hungry, an increase in people living as really as individuals because there's no family, an increase in feeling lonely, an increase in mental health crisis and all the details of that. Why? Because people didn't recognize that the real value is on the inside. That's why the Prophet ﷺ was telling us of that, giving us that indication there is going to be some advancement, but at Bishara says, I did attend your wedding. It was the most beautiful halal wedding ever attended. Oh, alhamdulillah. Allah yarda. Yeah, Bishara was there. All right. We also talked about كثرة الروم وقتالهم للمسلمين. What is that? Guess what? You would usually think that the Muslim population is always going to be the number one population. No, it's not going to be. According to the hadith, the Christian population is going to outnumber the Muslim population.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
We'll pray, inshallah. We're going to talk about that.
Muhammad Rasulullah. Hayya ala salat, hayya ala falah. Qad qamat as-salat, qad qamat as-salah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La